It's my pleasure today. I've been asked to introduce you to Matthew Lange, who is someone that I met a couple of years ago, actually. I met Matthew in Italy, where I was doing a fellowship on food innovation and design. And so we've sort of been running around in the same circles for the last couple of years. And so it's fun to meet each other and get to be both here today with you at Project Gastronomia. So I'm just going to read the bio. I'm going to put some things together for you. So Dr. Lange is the Associate Director of the UC Davis Initiative for Wireless Health and Wellness and the Principal Investigator for the International Center for Food Ontology Operability, Data, and Semantics. That's IC Foods for short at UC Davis. So he's leading efforts to build the infrastructure for the emerging semantic web, or the Internet of Food. And that Internet of Food holds promise to fundamentally alter the way we produce, process, deliver, and consume food, giving rise to an ecosystem of next-generation knowledge tools that lower technical innovation barriers for the creation of novel, traceable, ecologically friendly foods, products, medicines, and lifestyle regimens. In addition to teaching food product innovation and development, which is a capstone class for food science seniors at UC Davis, Dr. Lange publishes, teaches, and consults internationally on strategies and conceptual models for enterprise and industrial scale ag, food, diet, health knowledge infrastructures. So, he knows some things. Without further ado, Matthew Lange.
Really fantastic. Appreciate the invitation to come out here. It's been a true delight. And I had some pinchos, did I say that right? On my first night here. What a delightful experience. I ate some pig ear, and that was absolutely lovely. So I want to talk to you about this new phenomenon called the Internet of Food. You've probably heard about the Internet of Things, these devices that are connected to the Internet and producing data. Well, the Internet of Food is about the food data that's being transferred through the Internet of Things and a variety of other things. So I'm going to talk to you about that, and it has implications for food production, processing, safety, all the things that Hildreth just said, including wellness and happiness. So you can actually get to these slides if you like. You can go to icfoods.org and /BCC because it's the slides for today. So if you wouldn't mind, guys, now just hitting this full screen, and we can, great. So you can go there and you can find the slides. You can hit me up on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, at Matteo Lan. And if you want to hit me on traditional email, it's mclang@ucdavis.edu. So this is the slide I made to get the grant, to get funded for the International Center for Food Ontology Operability, Data, and Semantics. The idea being that we have all of this data about food, and we want to be able to integrate it in a standard fashion. Now, the easy way to think about the Internet of Food and all of this is, well, we have HTML, and I'll tell you a little bit about HTML. HTML is what runs the World Wide Web, hypertext markup language. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a minute, but the idea that maybe we need a hyperfood markup language. What would that look like? Well, it could connect all of these various aspects of food, health that results from eating the food, how we produce it, how we process it. And we're going to need all kinds of technology in order to be able to do that. Again, with the end goal of democratizing food and health and taking it out of the control of just a few stakeholders. So it's really about a common language, building an infrastructure that enables ecosystems of technologies to exist so that people can build platforms on top of this infrastructure in the same way that HTML enables websites to be built of many different sorts. And again, this is across environment, ag, food, diet, and ultimately health, knowledge spectrum. So I was asked to look into the future, 2050, and that's pretty far away. And I was trying to think, to gauge how far away that really is. Well, so I did the math, and it's 33 years away. And I would hazard to guess that most of the students in this room are not this age yet. So I thought, well, before we look to the future 33 years, maybe we should actually look back 33 years and see about what kinds of technologies existed 33 years ago. And what was the world like in 1984? Well, the internet was not yet invented. Didn't even exist. Tim Berners-Lee invented the internet in 1989, making hypertext markup language. He wrote the first web browser in 1990 at CERN. It was not Al Gore who invented the internet, contrary to what he likes to say. And this was done with hypertext, linking to URLs, Uniform Resource Locators. So a distinct address in the address bar goes to a specific page that you link to from that link in a word. And we can mark up all kinds of other things with hypertext markup language, bold, italic, trebuchet font. This is what we had in 1984. Can you press play on that? This is about food in the United States.
It certainly is a big bun.
It's a very big bun.
Big fluffy bun.
It's a very big fluffy bun.
Where's the beef?
Some hamburger places give you a lot less beef on a lot of bun.
Where's the beef?
At Wendy's, we serve a hamburger we modestly call a single. And Wendy's single has more beef than the Whopper or Big Mac. At Wendy's, you get more beef and less bun.
Hey, where's the beef? I don't think there's anybody back there.
You want something better. You're Wendy's kind of people.
So I looked up gastronomy, and the definition of gastronomy being, the way that we locate, gather, cook, and eat food. And that can be different across cultures. So it's a very subjective definition. So Spanish gastronomy is going to be different than, unfortunately, American gastronomy. And this is what the traditional American diet has turned into. And actually, in 1984, we were in the middle of, can you just click on the white space there? I'm stuck in the video. Just a white space on the side. Yeah, great. We were in the middle of what were called burger wars. And you can see here, actually, that in the burger wars, what happened was, and millions and millions of dollars were spent advertising in the burger wars, mostly about whose burgers were bigger, right? So the value proposition was who had more food, right? So more beef is better. At the same time, we had people doing political commentary on this very phenomenon happening. So back in 1984, it was long ago enough that Homer Simpson actually had hair. And
welcome back to the final day of this, the 23rd Olympiad. Brought to you by Krusty Burger.
You people are pigs! I personally am gonna spit in every 50th burger.
I like those eyes.
So you're going to hear from Isabel Hoffman later today about things that are much worse than perhaps your cook spitting in your burger because they don't like you. But in 1984, nobody was even thinking about adulterating food in a massive scale, the way things have happened with milk, with wheat, and other things that you'll hear Isabel talk about. So, and one other aspect we're thinking about 33 years ago, that was when the Supreme Court ruled that it was okay for the private use of home VCRs, a 5-4 decision. This is very close, right? There's 9 judges on the Supreme Court in the United States that it's okay to tape things with your VCR, right? Probably didn't realize that that was actually a landmark decision for the Supreme Court. So the question is, if we digitize food, if we can actually recreate food with robotics, right? Can I duplicate recipes? Can I duplicate Parmesan cheese in my kitchen? How is that going to affect other people's livelihoods? What does that mean? Something worth thinking about. And finally, Here's something that's a little bit off the radar in terms of food. 1984, Paul and Melinda Cartney arrested in Barbados for possession of cannabis. Today, this is the Barbados marijuana locator on the World Wide Web. You can find the quality you want. And we can talk, or we're going to mention a little bit more about how marijuana actually is changing food, and everybody's afraid to talk about it. It's changing food, and some things never change. I don't know how she does it, but I have a feeling she's just going to keep on going. So the Internet of Food, what is it? Well, we've got these huge data sources already from government reports, business reports, advertising reports from folks like Nielsen, all kinds of data about food and how we consume it at a population level. So that's sort of one circle around the Internet of Food, because all of that data and information is available on the web, whether you buy it or whether it's for free. We also have this, and we'll hear a little bit more about some of this aspects from our friends at MIT about the Internet of Things for food. They have a food computer. We're going to be hearing about it and scaling it up. And there's all kinds of sensors in these things, right? So we have soil sensors, we have atmospheric sensors, we have weather sensors, climate. How can we make sense of all of this data being emitted by these sensors? Well, one of the things that we can do is we can take those data sets and we can annotate it with vocabularies that we have designed in order to annotate that data with a common standardized language that we can all understand and agree on the terms. And then we can take this data that is emerged with the annotations from the semantic web, and we can lay that down in a distributed ledger or a blockchain. It's the same technology that underlies Bitcoin, right? So, and we can make that viewable to anybody. So that enables transparency and traceability. So we have these pervasive sensors, windows into human nature, into how we act and move in the environment, into the environment itself, and all of those consequences like we've never had before. We've got sensors everywhere, in the ocean, on the land, on the farm, and in our pockets, in our cell phones. And this is just a quick example. This is 5 seconds worth of data just from an accelerometer and a gyrometer. And your phone is full of many other sensors. So where do we start? How do we start building these vocabularies? It's an ocean boiling prospect, right? There's so much to do. If we're talking about ag, food, diet, health, it's huge. Well, we're not going to do it ourselves. But we said, well, if we were going to start building vocabularies, what would we start building them around? So we said, well, let's look at the world's most important problems. And we took the UN Sustainability Development Goal number 15, which is to protect and restore sustainable use of ecosystems, and Sustainable Goal number 3, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being. We thought those are two good places to start, the environment and health. And these can drive our choices for food. These can be the drivers of gastronomy, right? So it doesn't really matter whether we define gastronomy as Mexican gastronomy or American gastronomy or French gastronomy or Spanish gastronomy. What matters is the building blocks we use to describe that and understanding how those drive the food choices, including not just the eating choices, but the preparation choices and growing choices that we make. So if we look back at the FAO top 5 list of challenges, we see that lack of connectivity between tools and information and knowledge is present across every single one of their top 5 challenges. So we said, okay, look, let's build a vocabulary. These are my colleagues, 2 of my colleagues who are co-principal investigators on the IC Foods project, Tom Tomich, who is the director of the Agricultural Sustainability Institute at UC Davis, and Jim Quinn, who is the director of the Information Center for the Environment. And you'll notice I said ag, food, diet, health. Environment, ag, food, diet, health. Well, Jim is an environmental scientist. Tom is an ag sustainability expert. I am a food scientist, and our other co-PI on the project runs research informatics for the medical school at UC Davis. So we've got a person in each one of those camps to bring all of these data sets together. So we said, okay, look, let's build a vocabulary about the sustainability issues with this one here. So we said, okay, we've got issues. Sometimes maybe we have a water issue, and then inside of a water issue, which would be an integrated issue, we would have a component, maybe drought. And then we might have indicators that describe how well we are progressing on those specific issues. And we linked all of those together. And so what you're seeing here is you're seeing the blue dots are the component issues, the red dots are these integrated issues, and the green dots are indicators that map to all these other issues. Now, this is not data. These are just vocabulary terms used to describe sustainability issues and how they link together that we can then annotate data with. And when we annotate data with linked vocabularies, suddenly that data becomes linked because we've already done the job of linking the vocabularies through those definitions. That's the power of ontologies versus regular vocabularies. So we can also then start annotating what people care about. What issues do certain groups care about? Well, food companies care about different things than people who engage in livelihood studies and people who are involved in global initiatives. And the other mandate that we talked about is health. Well, we know that food is the single largest killer, the single largest element across the top 10 killers in the United States as well as worldwide. Could you just hit escape for 1 second and then go back? The escape key? Yeah, and then the full screen again. Thank you. Okay, and then worldwide. So food is the single largest common denominator across the top 10 killers, right? Yet when President Obama tasked our medical system to talk about what is precision medicine, they said, we need a new knowledge network, a new taxonomy of disease. They didn't mention anything about health. They said we need a new taxonomy of disease. And in fact, this entire tome that they came up with in 2011 was all about drugs. Drugs, 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 drugs. We need more drugs. We need to make it easier to make more drugs. And in fact, this phrase drug development appears a bunch of times with special boxes, cutouts just for the drug industry. Not one mention of food, except in this guy's signature, because he happened to work for the Food and Drug Administration. That's it. So we can't look to doctors to give us advice about food. In fact, your average physician has less than 0.2 units worth of nutrition training in their entire career in the United States. It's not much better in Europe. It's a little bit better, but not much. They made an ontology, the physicians, and they made a human phenotype ontology. And unfortunately, the root class in their ontology, their hierarchy of terms, the root class of phenotype is phenotypic abnormality. Well, that's not great for talking about food, because you know what? You're going to digest lipids different than I digest lipids. I'm going to digest proteins different than you digest proteins. Those are not abnormalities. Those are just differences between us, right? So doctors are always, a solution looking for a problem, and it's the wrong kind of problem. We want to increase health. We don't want to just constantly think that everybody is diseased. And I just came back from Cambridge 3 weeks ago. I was there talking to the folks at the European Bioinformatics Institute. This is the CHEBI ontology, the chemical role ontology. And you can see that for some reason they think that vitamins and nutrients are different classes of terms. They are drug-focused as well. So the medical industry has built all of these huge vocabulary systems for mining medical literature about drugs, and they've paid no attention to food. Well, now it's time that food leverage the same kind of data and build vocabularies that actually make sense the way we know how to build them, because we are familiar with food. And just one more sort of thing about this. If you look at the Unified Medical Language System, this UMLS, Unified Medical Language System, this is a language system at the National Institute of Health in the United States. It has all of the medical and health vocabularies across the spectrum, from nursing vocabularies, pharmacology vocabularies, psychology vocabularies, psychiatry vocabularies, physical therapy. There's 1,000 unique entries for the word depression. And I don't mean depression like if somebody hit you in the head with a pipe and you had a depression in your skull. No, I mean depression like you're depressed, you're sad. There's 1,000 unique entries. Well, there are 60 for the word happiness. 40 of those are about unhappiness. So the perverted nature of our healthcare system is that the people who are trying to improve our health don't actually know how to make us happier. Part of the reason is because they're their job is not to make us happier. Their job is to make us antidepressed. And that's just totally perverted. That's not what food does. We eat food to be happy in all kinds of different ways, to be happy as part of a community, to be happy because something is just delicious, to be happy because you're having a unique experience. Those are all different kinds of happiness, and none of that is captured in these vocabularies. So I mentioned marijuana earlier, right? So we have this aroma profiles that are being built. There's actually an occupation now, the equivalent of a sommelier for someone who hands out marijuana. They're called a bud tender. And the bud tender can actually, you can get a certificate in this. And the bud tender needs to know not just about flavors, they need to know about the effects. So the THC and the CBD and all of the different chemicals that are in marijuana and how they're going to affect you. So if you take this marijuana, is it going to make you stuck on the couch all day? Or are you going to have big ideas and write the next great novel? Right? And so thinking about, is it creative? Is it focused? Are you hungry? Are you talkative? Are you euphoric? So these people are actually coming up with their own vocabularies to describe these effects. And actually what we know now is that this doesn't just happen with marijuana. This happens with your gut microbiome. So that we can actually alter your gut microbiome, and we can change through your gut-brain axis, we can change your mood. We can give a nervous mouse that has no gut microflora the right microflora, and suddenly they're not nervous anymore, right? So we need to be thinking about how foods affect us. Right? And these are the people who are actually doing this more than anybody else. They're building the vocabularies to do this. So we're dealt a hand in life. And, the way you play poker, Hold'em poker is you don't get any more cards. You get 2 cards. And in life, we get 2 cards. We get the environment we're born into and the genes we're born with. And right now, those aren't changeable. And the way we win at cards is through our bets. So we bet with our diet, we bet with the activities that we engage in, and we bet by where we choose to locate ourselves. How much sun do we get? Right? How active am I? What kinds of activities do I do? And these things can drive our gastronomic decisions. So I thought I took this one out. So it turns out, there's a company in the United States called 23andMe, and you can have your genes sequenced. I did that, and then I did my own analysis looking through. The company was not allowed for several years to give out health information, so I wrote some code and ran some scripts and pulled scientific articles about some of my gene sequences. And one of them I pulled out was this, I have this polymorphism in this gene here, in my oxytocin gene. So oxytocin is the gene that is responsible for feeling good, for empathy. It's pair bonding. It's the pair bonding hormone. Women experience it when they're breastfeeding. You experience it when you're petting your dog, right? It's this, you have this bonding moment with people. You get a big rush of it when you orgasm. Well, it turns out that in my receptor, the binding constant is not so tight. So it binds, I feel it, and then it goes away really quickly, evidently, especially when I'm stressed. My wife saw this and she said, "Oh, you have the asshole gene." So I hope that translates. I was like, "Thanks, honey." But seriously, about genes here, here's something very serious about genes. So this is my friend Ahmed Asomi. He's at the University of Toronto, and he delivers reports, this nutrigenomics reports, to dietitians so that dietitians can help you customize your food choices. And we're going to take a look at one of these right here, this gene that's responsible for metabolizing folate. Actually, the letters for the gene are MTHFR, motherfur. And I have a typical gene. Turns out my wife has an elevated risk gene, along with 50% of Italian women. So what that means is that this gene right here, and I'm not going to give you all this biochemistry, but is responsible for processing folate and turning this homocysteine, which is red and bad, just like American politics, into something that's blue and good, methionine. And the more homocysteine you have, the harder it is on your vasculature. But it's not reported in the medical literature. You can't, a doctor is not going to treat you for subclinical hyperhomocystinemia. Yet, the dietary recommendations that we give to people, eat lean meats, exercise vigorously, these things elevate your homocysteine. 50% of Italian women have the gene that causes them to push things towards homocysteine. So the dietary advice that we're giving to people is not just the greatest good for the greatest number, it's bad for people. So we have to get better. We have a moral obligation to use personalized nutrition and personalized foods. We have the technology now to do this, and now that we know we can do it, we have a moral obligation to do it. This is another a graphic from that same paper where we went through every gene on the one-carbon metabolism pathway and annotated all of the genetic polymorphisms for all of those genes and looked at the interactions with nutrients and how those increase or decrease your likelihood of specific diseases. And it's just a model for how we can do this with every biochemical pathway that we have that relates to how we process foods. We can do this. It's not rocket science at this point. It's a matter of political and economic will. At the same time, not just knowing down to the genomic level what we should be eating, we also should be looking at how we characterize our physical activity, and we can do this with the same level of precision. So back when I was a postdoc, right after my PhD, I built a portal called You Seem Healthy, and the You Seem Healthy portal collects your data about where you go and what you do. This is me moving around. So the gray lines are driving, the green lines are walking. If there was a blue line on there, I'd be riding my bike. This is my intensity during that time. So now I can look at the daily activities that I do, and in the same way that gastronomy is a personalized experience and a subjective experience, so is health. Right? So a long-distance runner and a weightlifter are going to define health totally differently. That doesn't mean we can't define the word health. it means that they're using different subclasses of metrics to define what is healthy for them, in the same way that we would define gastronomy differently for each one of us for what it is. But the building blocks for what those are going to be the same. So we can connect all kinds of devices to this and annotate over it. And we've built a vocabulary called the PAF ontology, the physical activity, health, and fitness ontology, where we can characterize the type, condition, intensity, and the pattern with which you do your physical activities. This is what it looks like when we break it down into a tree of terms with hierarchies. Just like we have hierarchies of terms for kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species of animals, we can do the same thing with physical activities and relate them to each other. We can relate them to the skills you need, we can relate them to the equipment you need, and we can relate them to the foods you should be eating in order to do them. We've not just built those by ourselves. This is taken from the Compendium of Human Physical Activities. We've taken that vocabulary and we've turned it into an ontology. We've also taken the American Time Use Survey and all of their vocabulary terms. So we are not building our vocabularies in isolation. We are working with international groups to take the vocabularies that they have and make them operational for food. We're doing the same thing with stress, where we're characterizing the type, intensity, duration, and frequency of stress. Sometimes stress is healthy, sometimes stress is really unhealthy. A deadline stress for your paper means you actually get the paper written. You might not do it otherwise. Post-traumatic stress, on the other hand, not such a good thing. So we're working with all kinds of international partners, like I mentioned. We've got Valeria Peche at the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. She oversees the global map of standards and integration with the Global Organization for Ag and Nutrition Data, GODAN. We have Tom Baker, who is building the Global Agricultural Concept Schema, which aligns the UN FAO vocabulary with the USDA National Agricultural Thesaurus, as well as the CABI thesaurus. This CABI index is what indexes almost every agricultural library in the world, is an indexing system. We're working with Susie Lewis. They built the Gene Ontology and started the Gene Ontology Consortium. She's at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, and they also started the Model Organism Database. So, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what we're doing with Susie and OBO, the Open Biological Ontologies Consortium. We have the part of that, we have Damien Dooley, who's building the Food On Ontology, which is an ontology all about food, and I'm going to show you an example of that. Marie-Angelique Laporte, who's from Bioversity International, building out the Crop Ontology. We have Pankaj Jaiswal, who's from Oregon State and has funding from Grameen Bank to build out the Plantiome project and the plant and trait and plant ontologies. And all of these ontologies connect to each other. They're all mapped to each other already. We have Pierre-Luigi Boutgaig at Max Planck, who's the developer of the environment ontology, capable of characterizing interactions within environments between different species. And so what we're doing at IC Foods, because not all of those ontologies that are related to food are biological, we're taking the framework that OBO has built and where that the Open Biological Ontologies Foundry has built, and we're making the IC Foods Foundry. So using the same principles that they have so that people can come to the IC Foods portal and start building ontologies of food. This is an example of a flavor network from that came out in the MIT Technology Review, looking at how flavors are related to each other. And these are an example of how we could take what was started with that. And actually, we had a parallel project going where we've got two different ontologies, one on sensory experience and how we experience flavors and textures, and another ontology of food processing. So now we can map these two together and say, well, which processes on which foods give rise to which kinds of sensory experiences? And we can compute over all of this. And then here's Damien Dooley with the Food On ontology. You can see it delves into cooking methods and presentation methods, contact surfaces, which is hugely important for food safety, and the size and shape and form. And just a couple of my students who are PhD students who are starting in the lab. We have Tarini Nadavane, who's working on dough phenotyping as well as computational models of flavor using ontologies. And Ezine Uzo Okoro, she is the Chief of Software Engineering at NASA Ames, and she said, I want to come work with you to, last slide, to build personalized nutrition system for astronauts, because I want to go and terraform the moon. So she wants to not just terraform the moon, she wants to terraform the Earth, and she wants to terraform Mars as well. So she's, you know, she doesn't work very hard. She doesn't have very high goals. I think it's incredible. I'm really looking forward to this project. And we work with the AgMIP folks. This is the Agricultural Modeling Program. This is an international program for modeling climate, economics, what have you, making sure that our vocabulary is mapped to theirs as well. I'm just going to skip through this really quick. These are some of the folks, you can see them up online, who came to last year's IC Foods. We are working with blockchain providers to be able to put this data into different blockchains, as well as omics folks who are working on authenticity verification, and artificial intelligence companies who are then reasoning over this data and helping people to make personalized food choices. This year our conference will be November 6 to 8 in 2017 in Davis, California. And the weekend before, we have, I think, a very exciting hackathon coming with OpenIDEO for food waste. That's what I've got for you guys. Thank you very much for your attention.